Welcome everybody back to a very late version in the UK of the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. And for the third time today, I am joined by my illustrious colleague, Dave Robinson, who's taken Andy's place as he has priorities with the NFL this evening. Dave, welcome back again. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Good. I'm really enjoying this. Looking forward to this conversation, mate.
Certainly are. So today we are joined by someone who has been a champion wherever he's been. As part of a tag team or a group, he has been synonymous with wrestling for many years, carried NXT on his back with his buddies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the professor of professional wrestling who has just come back from the UK, Mr. Bobby Fish. Good afternoon, I believe, to you.
Yes, sir. It is the afternoon here. It's what time there? It's very late.
25 to 10 of an evening.
Okay, okay. Well, not too late, but not early by any means. Certainly
That's,
appreciate it, gentlemen.
no,
No
that's
worries,
fine. It's
mate.
it's not the latest one. I had one with the NWA a couple of weeks ago. I was on it till past midnight with a
Oh boy.
friend.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah,
different
midnight's
time.
definitely past my bedtime.
Yeah. Why was actually, Bob, it was better off to go forwards to go backwards. You've recently come back from the UK. You were doing One Pro Wrestling over in Doncaster, where
Yeah.
you actually fought the best, well, I think probably the best of British in Will Ospreay in a title tournament. Promos on socials were really good, got us invested. How was it working with Will, and how did you find the British wrestling side of the people that were there?
I've always enjoyed working over there. The UK is always, the fans are always just so into it and so opinionated, and I mean that in a good way. Your opinion should be heard in the arena. Fans, that's where it's supposed to be, not on, Twitter. So I've always kind of appreciated that. Not to say that the UK fans don't go on Twitter and spew as if anything, but it's been a little while since I've been over there. I think our last time over was when we wrestled, or my last time over might have been with WWE, maybe thing with Imperium.
Was it the Survivor
I
Series?
think. Either way, it's been a long time, so it was nice to get back over. Uh,
We've lost.
uh, it's been a while,
Yeah.
and the Osprey that I wrestled before was a very young Will Osprey, and it was a nice. I don't want to say surprise because I expected him to grow and be, he was good even when he was younger. But I feel like Will is hands down one of the best doing it. I really feel like he from what I saw in that match and then the rest of the night, like he's really rounded out his skill set, and man, just impressed all the way around.
Yeah, he's definitely up there with one of the best that we've seen. You touched on it just now about Twitter, Bobby, and I'm quite interested about this. You think that wrestling was better if, say, you could ban like a social media, or even say like the dirt sheets that come on and try to spoil things? I mean, obviously we try it, myself, Dave, and my colleague Andy that does this show. When we're watching the show live, as we do now in the UK, we do get a chance to watch shows now live. We have to hide our phones. And nowadays, even in the arenas, you don't really get a lot of signs anymore. You just get kind of people holding up their phones. Um, do you think that the social media's had that negative aspect from the opinionating side, but also from the product side?
I think it's human nature that people want their voice to be heard, and people want the validation. It's an innate desire as human beings. So whatever it is that you're interested in, and if you're a fan of this medium, you have an opinion on it, and you want your opinion to be heard, and you want your opinion to be either confirmed or denied so that you can argue it, or whatever the case. And I just think social media has allowed it to have, it's just a place where there's really no repercussions. So it's unregulated. There's no
Mm.
checks and balances. Like, you can get on there and say the most awful thing about whomever, and there's no recourse. I think a lot of times people will say things that they're not qualified to say. You know, they'll call a guy that's, you know, fighting mixed martial arts or something a bum, or, you know, obviously something worse, but let's keep this PG. And at the end of the day, it's like, dude, he's doing something that you will never do, have never done. And I'm not saying that makes him a better human being than you, but it does mean that he's in the arena. You know, he's got the blood on his face and the dirt on his hands, and, you know, he's putting himself out there to be judged. You're behind a keyboard just having an opinion. Like, there's no, I almost feel like you don't, that person doesn't deserve to have their opinion heard. But social media is such that, like, everybody's got a voice.
Exactly. Dave, over to you for your first time this evening.
Yeah, it's disappointing. It must be disappointing for you guys, Bobby, that there's some fans out there that kind of follow your careers and they're so respectful, and, you know, they've got an interest in you and where you're going in terms of company or matches, and there's like a vocal minority that seem to ruin it and spread false information about yourself, and it kind of, yeah, it reflects badly on the whole of the wrestling community, I suppose, sometimes.
I think so too. I think you're 100% right. Is I think it's a smaller number than people realize, but that the smaller number just chooses to be more vocal. And you know what it really comes down to is these people, they aren't happy with their lives, you know, and I don't want to be corny or cliche about it, but like, hurt people, right? I mean, we've heard it said about abused, you know, people with abuse and blah blah blah, and I'm not even going there.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I think that you have a lot of these people with these negative opinions. Some of them I'm sure are maybe warranted in some way, but like, some of them are just, it's just negative for the sake of, like, okay, well, this person's enjoying their life or they're doing something positive, I'm gonna come along and shit on it. Like,
Yeah.
it sucks, man. I almost feel bad for them that they feel compelled, their life is such that they are compelled to do such a thing.
Yeah, it's not very nice at all. I don't like it personally. I just, you know, you're entitled to your opinion, but, you know, there's a point, there's a line, you know, and that's why.
I agree, and when it becomes, you know, when it comes to pro wrestling, it's even more absurd because it's like, come on, guys, like, you know, the cat's been out of the bag for a long time, so some of what you're talking about, you don't know where the line between reality and fiction is,
Yeah.
and that's okay, but like, so some of what you're talking about, and then to want to know the backstage stuff, but then not follow along the storylines that you're being presented, it almost doesn't make sense. It's like, you shouldn't be a fan of it if that's the case.
Yeah.
Like, you should want to, I'm I mean, to make it as simple as I can, like, you should want to cheer the babyface and boo the heel and play along. And if not, I don't know, in a way, didn't you kind of waste your money by buying a ticket?
May well be, yeah. Before we move on to the career that we want to talk about, your career, recently, more so probably WWE side, we've seen more personalities come into WWE, not necessarily wrestling guys. You know, like the Bad Bunnies, we've had Mayweathers, we've had Logan Pauls. I didn't necessarily mind, say, like a Bad Bunny or a Logan Paul, because they seem to have taken it seriously in terms of getting the right trainers, like Shawn Michaels, Kendrick, and people like that would train them. So they're taking it seriously. Do you mind it so much when they're actually taking it as seriously as what they're taking it to, in order to put on the show for the fans out there, and also to respect you guys, because you guys do this, you put your lives on the line by walking through that curtain every time you go out there. You are one false move away from, you know, well, career ending, really. So do you mind it so much when they're actually doing the right training and taking it as seriously as what they should be?
I don't, no, I have no problem with anybody if people are willing to pay to see you do something, and that could be a boxing match, that could be a pro wrestling match, it could be a goddamn chemistry experiment. If people are willing to pay to see you do it, like, what place in this world do I have that gives me the right to say, oh, well, that's rubbish, or that's not fair, or that's like, so no, it I don't, it doesn't really bother me. I Some of the Logan Paul stuff that I saw from like WrestleMania, whatever, like he's a capable athlete.
Yeah.
He really is. And I don't know if he's, I'm not here to say like, oh, he's good at pro wrestling or he's not, but I know he's a good athlete and the kid's coordinated and he can move well.
Yeah.
Which is more than I can say for other people in pro wrestling. So why shouldn't he be able to? And the only issue I would have would be, guys coming in, not taking it serious, not having the goods, and yet still kind of taking one of the spots away from the boys that could be on like a WrestleMania or something. It's a very nuanced question, I guess. I think it, if you take it serious and you're not doing the industry a disservice, by thinking like, oh, well, anybody can do that, then yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm 100% okay with it.
Yeah, exactly that. Let's move on to you now, Bobby. I find you one of the most. I'm not a wrestling scout. I'm by no means a wrestling teacher, but I like what I see on the TV and some of the stuff from you. You seem one of the most well-rounded. Like you could go into any kind of match and it would be fine. But did you, when you were training? Because I think it was Harley that was training you. Did you have to sort of get a base skill set before branching out into others, or was it just natural for you?
I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I do feel like a lot of pro wrestling I picked up naturally because I was fairly coordinated and a decent athlete, which I think can go a long way. I was trained predominantly by Tony DeVito, so and Tony gave such a foundation that like I'm not sure I needed much more. But if I look back on my career, what I realize is that with the foundation I had from Tony and the basics that I knew, when I thought I was ready to start adding my own flair, no pun intended, to what I did so that I would be trademark and I would be, I would stand out. And I probably shouldn't have tried to do that as early as I did, because I look back at some of the stuff I did when I was working for Noah, and I don't think I had a very good gauge then on how to get my martial arts, because I've been doing martial arts since I was 8 years old. And that's my flavor, that's the style of pro wrestling I choose to do. And at that time, I didn't know, I knew how to do the martial arts I knew how to do, but I didn't know how to do them in a pro wrestling style, if you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah.
And what the later part of my career, I think, was, and I really, focused on and learned, Kyle and I think we're big influences on each other when it came to that. And we bounced a lot of stuff off of one another because we were both martial artists who happened to be pro wrestlers. And I think there's a certain amount of both that you need to be good at putting your martial arts into your pro wrestling.
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. Dave, you're going now.
Yeah, obviously you touched on Kyle there. I thought your run at Red Dragon, in AEW, I thought it was kind of, I know Kyle's had to have surgery. I kind of felt that you you could have had a lot of momentum there as Red Dragon, and there's probably some things and some matches in AEW that you weren't able to have. Did you kind of feel that at the time? It was just obviously unfortunate circumstances with Adam Cole and Kyle getting injured when they did.
Oh, 100%. You know, it's ironic that I was the only one that stayed healthy because we did triangle with they, you know, it was me, but it was, you know, a fictional injury angle.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we left money on the table, but there wasn't much that we could do with the injuries to them. But I do feel like there were so many matchups for Kyle and I in that company, you know, that would have been really, really interesting. And I mean, we got to do a few with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, but you know, we didn't really get a chance to rekindle things with the Young Bucks. We have a long history with them.
Yeah.
You know, the unfortunate you know, what everybody knows happened with Jay Briscoe and whatnot. But for Mark and Jay, at least at that time, you know, Jay still being here, I saw that maybe down the road, which, man, we just always had magic sort of chemistry with those guys. And there were the Lucha Bros, another one that just such a clash of styles between them and us. It would have been cool. Yeah, there's a lot that I think still there, you know, that I thought they could do like a Crockett Cup style pay-per-view with all the tag teams that were there at one point, and I thought that would be really cool. But I'm a big NWA fan, you know, Crockett years, so of course that's where my mind's gonna go.
Of course, we as I've done a lot of. I spoke to Sal Ronaldo, Tony Lacasso, and a couple of others from NWA recently, just before before they announced the Crockett Cup. So I know it's a big thing. We got one of our other ladies that does this program with us, or this podcast, is a big NWA fan. She goes out to the Crockett Cup. She's not going this year, but she's been out to the Crockett Cup. So we always keep an eye on that, and we watch it on YouTube. But you touched on Carl. It's great the recovery's going away. I know you've already discussed that on other things, that he's recovering well, which is great. And we send him our best wishes, obviously, here, and hopefully he'll get better soon, and we can see him back where he belongs in that wrestling ring. But with Carl, did that tag team just naturally flow with you two? Did you find you had to do much, or was it just one of those things that used to just got together and it just clicked?
Pardon my French, sir, but it was fucking magic. And I were familiar with each other. We had definitely known each other coming up on the come up, you know, doing independence and all that stuff. We had wrestled against each other in Evolve. And you know, I knew he was in Ring of Honor, and I came in, and the idea, once I was given a contract, was presented to me by Delirious, by Hunter, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. But I don't think either one of us had any idea what kind of chemistry we were going to have as a team, as opposed to, you know, because we had wrestled against each other and had great chemistry. But as a team where our personalities could kind of run into each other and, you know, rebound. And, you know, run up against it really, man, and it was, I don't know, can't put it into words. It just it fit like a glove.
Yeah, some of those teams just click when you put them together, and used to are absolutely amazing in Ring of Honor and obviously in AEW. Just quickly, we got a couple of questions from fans. Now we've asked fans to send in some random questions. It's a bit like Steve Austin's shot clock. If you've seen his podcast, he does a shot clock. We don't time it, and we certainly don't drink shots when we do it. But there's a couple here that I want to ask you. One of them is, what was your favorite arena to compete in?
I gotta say the Tokyo Dome. That would have to be up there. But I will also say that the takeovers were such electric that I don't know. I mean, just one that comes to mind right off the top of my head was in the UK when we did the running on Imperium. I mean, that it just felt, I don't know, it felt naughty.
But we can say that now. The UK fans are naughty. We'll put that on there. Another quick one was other than your theme, what's the best entrance theme in wrestling?
Other than
Other than
mine, from when? We talking? Because okay. So can I not? So if we're saying the Red Dragon theme,
no, not allowed.
I can't. Or the Undisputed Era, I can't do that one. Okay. One that, because there's definitely been ones over the years. I was always a big Triple H fan. I was always a big the All About the Game was always one that got me up at.
Yeah, that's definitely one. That's one of mine. Definitely.
I think it's froze, hasn't it, mate?
You froze, Bobby. Yeah. Nope. There we go.
Oh, he's back. There's back.
Back.
Yeah, man. We lost you for a minute, mate.
We lost you for a minute. Yeah, you're back
now. Did you hear that last part or no?
You say Hunter was All About the Game was one of the ones you said about.
That was one of them that I enjoyed, because there were so many from the Attitude Era that like, I think that was when they really kind of hit the music, really encompassing the persona. I think they were really hitting home runs at that time. The Rock's entrance music always got you. Stone Cold, how do you not get that? I was always, I'm a big Great Muta fan, huge Great Muta fan, and there was just something about his music in Japan. I don't know. His was another one that was very memorable for me.
I always use Triple H or for the just for the whole, not just for the music, but for the whole theatrical aspect, was Undertaker's.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, too, like, it's become more, rock concert than not when it comes to what WWE has done with them over the years. And it's almost become its own lane in entertainment.
Yeah, definitely.
Talking to you, Bobby, obviously about your martial arts and wrestling. You've mentioned Japan, you've mentioned the NWA. Growing up, when you were getting into wrestling and deciding that's something that you wanted to pursue, get the impression that you had a lot of influences. It wasn't necessarily just the WWF or the WWE. Would that be right?
So I was there was a lot of WWF, because I'm an upstate New York guy originally. So, like, the Dynamite Kid was a huge. He was probably one of my early favorites. But when he disappeared from WWF TV, I didn't know where he went, because there was no internet then. Kind of the same thing with Ricky Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat was another one that I was really drawn to. And then Sting became like my favorite when I started watching the NWA, and that was the first time I saw Muta. And when I saw the program between Muta and Sting, just turned me into a lifelong, like, I started to consume anything Muta that I could get my hands on. I mean, he didn't seem real to me.
Yeah, he was one of a kind, wasn't he, Muta? From what we've seen of him, definitely one of a kind.
Totally one of them.
Another quick one for my fans, Bobby, is what was your favorite pay-per-view growing up to watch?
Growing up?
Yeah. What was your favorite? Or even now as well,
growing up, it was definitely have been something NWA. I just remember, like, the first few times I saw Dusty Rhodes at like a Starcade, and I'm not one of those people that can recall the actual dates and who was what and blah blah blah. But I just know that I've got these vivid illustrations in my mind of things that I saw that captivated me before I knew to have like questions. I remember seeing Dusty Rhodes at the top of a cage bleeding buckets and just couldn't, just couldn't take my eyes off it. And so it definitely would have been one of the Starcades or something like that. I don't know. There was a certain grit to some of those that just captivated me as a kid.
Yeah, definitely. I think my favorite in the WWE was the Royal Rumble. It's just because of the unpredictability. Sometimes you don't know who's coming out when that goes off. And
Memories of those too, because I would watch them with my dad and my brother, and we would get the pay-per-views, and the Royal Rumble always a big one every year.
Yeah, next year I'm heading out there next year because it's coincides. Well, my 40th's in June next year, and the one thing my girlfriend said, "What do you want to do for it?" And I was like, "Right, well, there's no pay-per-views around that time, so there's one. I've done WrestleManias, I've done all of that. There's one that I need to cross off that bucket list, and it's the Royal Rumble. So we're heading out there next year for that, and Andy, I think, is going to join on the show. Dave, over to you, my man.
Sorry, my microphone just cut out.
That's right.
Can you hear me still?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Bobby.
Yes.
Ian, obviously, Bobby, you've had a really, a career where you've been to a lot of different companies, a lot of achievements, a lot of titles, a lot of accomplishments. I know that you've recently had a boxing match, but have you still got things in pro wrestling that you want to achieve? If your career ended today, would you look back on your career and say, I've did everything that I wanted to do in wrestling, or are there still opponents, like dream opponents that you haven't faced that you would like to get in the ring with?
I think for most of us that do this, there'll always be something left. But I think if it were to end for me today, I'd be very satisfied. I mean, you could cut out as a capsule in time like 1 week of some of these just mishaps and adventures and just be like, okay, a lifetime would be worth just that 1 week, or the amount of times that I've flown back and forth to Japan, now as I sit here as an adult, and to think of, me as a 12 or 13-year-old, I had no idea that was going to be part of my life. So I'm just grateful for, all of that stuff. And from a wrestling career standpoint, there's no place I wanted to wrestle that I haven't. Sure, there's opponents, because it's the nature of the wrestling business. You're coming in when somebody's going out and vice versa. And, you have people that you see on a daily basis for like 6 months to a year. And then, you don't see them again for 2-3 years. Like that was literally the case for Kyle and I with the Young Bucks. We were working in New Japan and Ring of Honor. They were, two people that we saw more than our own family. And then we go to NXT, AEW starts, and didn't see those guys for like 5 years,
Yeah.
Time does fly as well, doesn't it? In wrestling, like 1 minute you're starting, and the next minute it's boom, that's it, it's done.
Yeah. So I think it's really, the trick is enjoy the journey as best you can, because the journey is really, that's the good stuff. The destination is like, it's a blink of an eye, but the journey and the friendships and the crazy stories.
Bobby, what's your recollection of that time in NXT when it was a little bit competitive, at least from a fan's perspective? There were talks of the Wednesday night war, and it was NXT versus AEW. Living through that and experiencing it and wrestling at both companies, what did you make of that time? Was it as competitive as people like to believe? Was it a war as such?
I mean, I can speak for NXT because that's where I was for what I think would be considered most of that time. and I would believe that everybody was aware of one another.
Yeah.
I don't know how aware. Like, I know because of the time frame that we were in NXT, we were clicking on all cylinders, and those takeovers were magic.
Yeah.
I don't know that anything could have really blurred our vision, you know? So, and I think competition is great.
Yeah.
And it's only it only created more places for people to have jobs and make a living. And at the end of the day, that's what this is supposed to be about. And I want my friends to make a good living and make as much money as they can. And of course, I'd like that for myself. I think we all, as competitors, take pride in what we do. So do you want to be the best show? Yeah, of course. But what is the best show? You know, the best show to you might be totally different from me. You know, there's people that like football and there's people that like basketball. You know, so I think it's the same thing with pro wrestling. It's so subjective. You know,
Yeah.
what one person sees as incredible wrestling, another person might be, you know, it might be kind of, that's shitty to me. And that's just kind of the way it is. And
Yeah.
especially in pro wrestling, it's so subjective.
I think from a fan's perspective, or certainly me speaking as a fan, I may have a preference in terms of a company, but I want all of the company. I love wrestling, you know. I may prefer a certain company or a certain type of match, but I don't want. If I was a WWE fan predominantly, I wouldn't want AEW to fail. I would want AEW to be as competitive with WWE. And I'm sure that's how the wrestlers, that's how you feel, because as you say, you've got friends in different companies as well. So you want wrestling to do well, I suppose. That's what I imagine anyway.
For sure. And the fact that we were doing as well as we were with NXT, and then to me at that time, I mean, I'll call it what it was. It was always AEW was always like Matt and Nick's company to me at that time, because I was from it. But those were my two friends that were there that like I at one time was so close to, and knew about their families and knew their wives and like wanted to just see. And I know how hard they grinded because we were grinding right next to them. And then they also like they did innovative things like, you know, being the elite, and they took chances, those two. And so to see a level of success come to them and a company start, and a guy like Tony Khan be willing to put his money into this thing that they, you know, that was very much them. I was watching from a distance, but man, I couldn't have been prouder of you know, guys that I was up and down the roads with.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, man.
Bobby, it's been magical talking to you for this period of time. We're going to wrap it up now. Can you just tell the fans where your appearances are, what you've got coming up, and how they can reach you and all your socials?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, we got the Undisputed podcast. We are on the Premier Network. That is the video portion. The audio portion you can get wherever you get your podcast. We're on all the platforms, but it's the Undisputed podcast with Bobby Fish. BobbyFishApparel.com is where all of my merchandise is. We got some new ones, new designs coming out in the next month. Socials, the Bobby Fish on Instagram. I think it's the same thing on Twitter. I really try to
it is.
place, man. I do not look at Twitter.
No.
But yeah, that about sums it up. I will be in, well, I don't remember my schedule, but I do, I swear.
That's brilliant. I'll just quickly, with us, Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast is presenting Buckle Up. We're co-producing a show with Ignite Wrestling Pro over here in the UK. Tickets are very limited now. We've pretty much sold out the front. We have sold out the front. It's just limited tickets available for that show. We've got some great things planned there. We are back on Tuesday. We've got one of our British wrestlers attending. Buckle up, Taylor James on the show. Then we've got SoCal Val. We've also got Just Incredible this time next week, going for a bit of extreme wrestling. We've got AJ Kazana from the NWA. And then lastly, to round off the month, we have EC3, another NWA superstar, joining us on the 23rd. Bobby, it has been fantastic talking to you for this period of time. We do love talking to our wrestlers on the podcast. They make for fascinating viewing. We thank you very much for your time. Guys, this has been the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast, and me and Dave are just about to go to bed. So good night, everybody.